All right, well, today we are back to work on the Turbo LS street truck build. We got this thing running, we've got it driving, we've done pulls with it, but there's just a few details to iron out, as there usually are with any build. If you've been hanging around the garage with me for a while, you know I like to talk about how instead of going down the rabbit hole and doing everything you could ever think you'd want to do on a build during the initial build process, you know, obviously there's things that are going to be way easier to do at that time, but a lot of times you're better off just getting it done, driving it, using it, and then seeing what you use it for, how you use it, and how all the stuff kind of works together. Some stuff you might think you really want or need, you don't even end up needing, and vice versa. So that's what I like to do. I like to finish a project, get it running, start using it, and then go from there. So that's what we've done, and there's some things we figured out. So problem number one, the transcooler. So where I mounted the transcooler was a pretty questionable setup. It was a 50-50 shot if it was gonna work down under the bumper. That was the best place I could find to mount it. Well, it doesn't work. So we've got a couple options. I have this big wide Mishimoto dual pass cooler, which we could put right up here behind the hood latch. Now that would be nice because it would be in direct airflow for the most part, and it would be getting the air the fans are drawing once we upgrade these to the 16-inch fans we have ordered. Now the problem with that is that's where the AC condenser goes. So to make that work, we would have to do kind of a half-size AC condenser, you know, one that's the same width but just half the height. Now, if this was a swap vehicle and we were making custom AC lines anyway, sure, I'd be good with that. But we're not. This isn't, you know, this is the motor that came in. All we've got to do is get an updated AC compressor, just the newer model AC compressor, and then we can use stock lines. So I can't bring myself to do that unless we absolutely have to. So what we're going to do for now is try to put a small fan on the current transcooler and see if that solves our problems. All right, got the fan in, got it wired up. It's a little big for this cooler. Really need a 25 row. The line routing isn't ideal now that we had to put a fan here. But again, this is kind of a trial run. But for now, let's try this. I think we're hitting boost cuts still. And with a tiny spring in the gate. All right, well, we made it back from our test drive. Trans temp seems to be a lot better. I'd like for it to be a little cooler than it is. It still kind of creeps up slowly, but the highest we got was 195, and that was kind of sitting in traffic, putt-putting, never getting into converter lockup. You know, the slip generates heat. That was after multiple pulls. So not that bad. Definitely a lot better than before. Before we would have overheated the trans doing that. So for now, we'll revisit it at a later date. I'd like to get a bigger cooler, bigger fan, and maybe relocate it to the back. I think that's my long-term plan. I do not like to deal with stuff getting hot. I don't like having to baby it or go, oh, I did 2 pulls, the trans is probably getting hot, we're gonna have to chill out for a bit before we do another pull. Like, I wanna be able to beat the sun out of this thing non-stop and not have to worry about it. So that's something we'll address, but at least for now, the truck's drivable, it's usable, and we'll work on that. Now, you saw the truck hit boost cut again. Now, yesterday when I drove it, I took Raldo for a ride. It did boost creep. It was supposed to be making, 4 or 5 pounds, and it made 11, but that was it. It didn't boost cut. So I'm like, man, I can't believe this thing's boost cutting like instantly now. It's so weird. So as I'm looking around here, I'm like, what the heck? My wastegate tube goes down there. Like, whoa, what happened? Oh, okay, my wastegate tube is pretzeled and basically pinched completely shut. It is not supposed to be pointing there. It's supposed to be pointing down at the ground over here by the frame rail. Now, when I built it, I turned the truck from lock to lock, and it didn't go near the wastegate dump tube with it tucked up right against the frame rail. However, one thing I've learned from my drift cars, like my LS Miata, it'll be 1.5 inches, 2 inches from the control arm in the air, even on the ground, just full lock. But somehow, just with the flex, with the road force of the tire, it'll turn all the way to the point where it hits the control arm. So I should have thought about that with this truck. So we're gonna have to repair that, but this thing is hot because we just beat the sun out of it. So we're gonna work on another project. This is a project that I'm really excited about, and it's gonna make life a lot easier. I'm really tired of driving around with the laptop on the center console. It's hard to see, it's distracting to try to look over there at it. It's not working for me, and it doesn't feel like I can't just cruise the truck around because I've always got a laptop in my way. So what we have is a Holley 6.86 inch Pro Dash. Now you might be wondering, Taylor, where are you going to put this? I thought this was a street truck, so on and so forth. Well, we're not getting rid of the stock cluster. So I want to keep this thing street. I want to have the stock cluster. It works for the most part. You know, we've got fuel gauge works, volts work, speedo works, RPM works. The only thing that doesn't work is trans temp, oil pressure, and coolant temp, just because we don't have the stock sensors plugged in. We could run splitters to those sensors and even get those working very easily if we wanted to. So I want to keep this. Point of the story here. So what we're going to do is put this, it just happens to be the perfect size to fit right here where the stock radio is. So we'll basically have our digital dash right here, still perfectly in eyesight, but keep the stock cluster, everything look normal. Now, I don't want to give up my radio, right? Like, this is a street truck. We got a bump, we got a sub. This thing jams pretty good. So what I did was I ordered a Bluetooth receiver that we're going to put back here, and we'll just do everything off our phone. The volume, changing songs, so on and so forth. It'll all be to this little Bluetooth receiver, which will power the amp. So we'll still have music. So yeah, let's start taking this apart, see what we got. All right, so obviously the first step was to pull the factory trim bezel out, pull the factory radio out, get all that out of the way, and see if this thing's going to fit and how it's going to fit. So I went ahead and tossed the trim bezel back in just to get a better idea with the dash in there of what we were going to have to do to mount it. So I measured the thickness of the dash because the mounting tabs are on the back of it, and then the thickness from the face of the trim bezel back to the factory radio mounting tabs. Now, ideally, we'll mount this to the factory radio mounting tabs. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. The problem is it's almost a little too thick to do a simple bracket. There's not enough room to do a bent bracket to countersink it some, so we're having a bit of a dilemma. This is not necessarily an easy way to do this. So after eyeballing it some more, I decided I wanted to see if I could use the factory radio bezel deal with this little cubby, see if I could modify that and mount the dash to it, and then easily, boom, mount the dash to the dash. It's kind of confusing, digital dash, dash. After looking at it though, the dash is just a little too big. It's pretty much at the limit. We'd have to remove all the support. So we had to make aluminum brackets. Now the hope is that we can just make a straight bracket off the side and bolt it in and it be at the right depth. It's close. Measuring it, it's close. So we trace out the outline of the dash itself and then the tab, the little wing that we're going to need to attach it to the factory radio mounting location. And then it's time to cut them out of some aluminum. So I use a jigsaw for this, for doing these. This is a pretty simple cut, but any sort of complex cut, I don't really like using the jigsaw, but there's just really not a better option. So anyway, we get the tabs on and then we need to figure out where to mount them. Now this is where things get tricky because the trim bezel is curved. The dash has a little bit of a curve and there's no way for us to figure out where the holes are going to be, mark the holes with the trim bezel in. So we have to do it with the trim bezel out, which means we got to pretty much figure out where is going to be perfectly exactly at the top of the opening. So we eyeball it, we do some measuring, get a pretty general idea of where it needs to be, and then mark our holes out. So now it's time to pull it back out, take the brackets back off the dash, and drill our holes to mount them into the truck itself. Now we're hoping that we got all the measurements right and that this fits as it should. Only one way to find out though. Oh, so close. That little gap. Oh, it's so close though. I didn't want this to be over the screen. Yeah, I'll try to shift it up just a hair. I mean, it's got to go up like 2 millimeters. That might be enough by itself. I hate having to take this out and put it back in so many times. Oh, literally perfect. Look at that. I got to make a little cover plate for down there, but that's it. We're just at the border here. I'll have to show you. Probably can't see from back there, but literally right at the border. So I need to pull this back out and then we need to wire it. All right, here's what we've got. So we've got our main plug. This goes to our can, which I have the splitter down here. So we've got USB to the dash, USB out for tuning with the laptop. I'll try to find a better solution to hold those, but that kept everything up out of the way. The cords are tucked behind this plastic, so if I need to pull one out, I can pull it out and just tuck it back under there. Again, not a permanent solution. We got our GPS receiver in. I almost didn't put it in because we have speed with this truck because we're using, automatic trans with a speed sensor, but the GPS can do other things, and I figured why not? I was just being lazy. So we got that put in as well. And then again, this is our USB for the dash to plug directly into the dash. Everything's good. I left this long in case if we have any interference issues, I can run this maybe into the engine bay for better, cleaner power, but we'll see if this works for now. So we can actually install it now. All right, let's see if it turns on here before we go putting this thing back in. Yep, there we go. And put this back in for the final time. I actually need the keys. So I gotta put it all the way down in one to get this thing to snake in here. All right, well, super happy with how that came out. Perfect size for this location. Like I said, just gotta make a little panel to go in here. I might try to tinker with that later because I want the satisfaction of it being fully done, not done with a giant gaping hole here. So we might pull this back out. But I want to move on to more pressing projects, being our wastegate dump. So let's pull this thing off and see what we can come up with as far as rebuilding it. Hopefully we can cut back to the flange and reuse the flange. If not, we're kind of SOL. So let's see what happens here. Can't seem to figure out why this thing was boost creeping. Oh man. Hopefully we don't run out of argon before we get this welded because, yeah, been low on argon. If you watched a lot of videos ago, I mentioned that we were pretty much out. Well, gauge still reading 0. Forgot to go get some, so yeah, let's see if we can make it through this. Running about as low as I can for stainless. All right, well, it's not that pretty because we had to run very little gas flow and no post flow. So pretty much as soon as it stopped welding, there's no more gas just to try to conserve it as best we could. But simpler design, this should keep it above the wheel and tire entirely, at least as of right now. So, I mean, one thing I will say, this thing tacoed, this thick material, didn't break a single weld, nor did it break the weld to the wastegate to the manifold or wastegate flange to manifold. You would think it would have broke the wastegate off, but nope. So pretty stoked on that. All right, new wastegate dump tube is in. You can see that's at full lock. Even past that, there's no way the wheel's gonna hit it. We would have to go past that by a considerable amount and then hit a big bump. So I think we'll be okay. And if it does touch it, it's just going to rub the straight part. It shouldn't jar it like it did before. So the dump's just kind of pointing down at the ground. The reason I did it the other way was to get it all past everything, but when the AC's working, it is gonna drain right on it. So we might have to address this again at a later date. I just wanted to do it this way. I was trying to keep the fender liner, which I haven't even put back in yet and probably can't now with where I ran that. I think that was another reason I ran it the other way. Anyway, point is it's fixed and we can go drive the truck. I'm gonna tinker with the dash a little more, make sure we got all the info we need on there, and then we're gonna go take this thing for another rip. There's a lot of cops out earlier too. I thought I saw a cop drive by at the end of the road, and I was like, no, it wasn't a cop. I'll get on it. Nah, we'll wait. Get a little further out into the middle of nowhere, and what do you know? There was 4 cops sitting in this little pull-off, like, 500 feet further down the road, so dodged the bullet there. All right, let's try it out. We got our gears, we got target air fuel, actual air fuel, we got injector duty cycle. I might make air fuel bigger and get rid of the duty cycle. This thing drives so good, I love it. It's so much better, like I said, not having the laptop sitting here, worried I'm gonna knock it over with my elbow. This is so perfect, man. I can't get over it. All right, we got what we need for our radio, and this is going to hook up to my phone via Bluetooth, and then we're going to power the amp with these RCAs. So we have an amp that powers our sub and our speakers, our door speakers. So I had to get this splitter. I was trying to find one of these that had, 4 outputs, but I couldn't find one. So we're basically just going to split left and right, and then we'll have our 4 cords into the amp. So yeah, we're just going to give this switch power and ground, plug it into the amp, and it should work. Constant power. Okay, let's see how we can wire this in. All right, we got music back. It was a bit of a struggle. So you can see the receivers here. It says constant power. It kind of bothers me. I kind of want to put it on switched power. But anyway, going out to the amp, blah, blah, blah. That's all in. So the way this is set up is you have power, ground, then you have a remote wire to turn the amp on. So this amp, ever since I got this truck, it had the sound system in it, and there was always a quirk where you had to flip this toggle switch on and off real fast for the amp to turn on. For whatever reason, it just didn't like to turn on. So I wired it up that way with the remote wire, whatever, it would not turn on. Would not turn on. So finally I wired 12 volts to the switch, and now it turns on. So that's all fixed. Again, my only question mark is just leaving this thing on all the time with constant power. I'm not super fond of that. I think I'm gonna wire it to switched power. All right, I got that sorted. Now it is on key on power. And it comes on pretty quick. Now we're connected to Bluetooth. We do our magic dance on off. And then we just control everything off our phone. Boom, simple as that. All right, cool. I'm glad to have that done. Have it like that. Now, if I turn the key off, both of those will turn off automatically. So, sweet. All right, now I wanna get this trim done. So what I'm going to try to do is just modify, and when I say modify, I mean cut almost all of this apart. Try to keep at least part of the tabs, maybe the bottom ones, cut the rest of this off, and see if I can just jam it in there under the dash. That's my game plan, at least. There's a better tool for this, but I don't have it anymore. All right, so this was a long shot from the start. Basically, we're trying to save the little mounting tab so we can bolt it in with the dash, hold it in place, not have to do any weird nonsense to try to keep it in place. However, the problem is they're offset, and basically the structure that holds them is in the way of the dash, but without the structure, there's nothing to hold them. So we resorted to alternate methods. We gave it our best shot, but it just was not gonna work. I had to resort to super gluing it to the bottom of the Holly dash, which I wasn't fond of, but gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. All right, sweet, everything works. Make sure the radio still works. Yep. All right, sweet. All of that being done, I wanna go do a real pull in this thing. Try to actually get after it, data log it. We kinda had baby pulls, or I backed out of it a bunch, so I'm gonna try to really get after it. right, well, I went through the data logs, and we are still having a little bit of boost creep, or kind of a lot of bit of boost creep, really, depending on how you look at it. So, 4 PSI spring, we're creeping to 11.5, 12 PSI, and I'm not taking it to redline. That's at 6,200 RPM. So, yeah, we got a problem. We got to fix that. There's some options. We got to figure out what to do, at least for now, since this motor is built. You know, we can run 11, 12 PSI in pump gas. If this is a stock motor, we might be getting towards the edge with that boost on pump gas. But, you know, this is a built motor, so I think we'll be okay. Fingers crossed. I prefer not to have to rebuild this or take it out anytime soon, but you never know. But yeah, that's where we're at. So I want to take Josue for a ride again. He rode in it when we were first test driving it and, you know, first got it in a boost and it was just hitting boost cut and stuff. So I want to take him for a ride where we can actually do a pull where it doesn't hit boost cut at 5,000 RPM. So he should be here soon. And we'll have some fun. Go do some pulls. I'm trying to not wear it out too much. The last thing I need is another non-running project when I just made this a running project, and I've got 2 other basically non-running projects plus the vet, so 3. So yeah, hopefully we don't break it. But I mean, what's the point of having it if you're not going to beat on it? So anyway, jibber jabber. Let's see what happens when Josue gets here. So Josue reminded me that I have a draggy, and I remembered that I took a draggy run of the truck when it was basically stock. It had the 6-liter and the 4080. The trans wasn't great. It was kind of slipping. But I have a run before I took it apart. That was the last thing I did before we tore into it. So I want to see how that compares. So here's our before and after. Before on the left, after on the right. As you can see, not really a huge difference. I kind of expected this considering we're on 30-inch all-terrain tires, but I was a little surprised. I'm sure we could work on this more, but the boost cut kind of screwed everything up.
It's weird because you take off and it's still not making this.
While I was pedaling it, I was like quarter throttle, trying to keep it from spinning. Yeah, it didn't really improve on the second run. Well, again, we'll have to try this again. I'm literally quarter throttle until we get into 3rd gear, and then as soon as I weigh into it, we hit boost cut. So not a great test. We'll try this again later. Well, with all these pulls, we still haven't done a good burnout, so we had to get one of those in, even though it was boost cutting. Another thing we hadn't done yet was actually take this thing on the highway. We hadn't even gone fast enough cruising to get it into converter lockup. So I wanted to go down the highway for a bit and just see how it cruised overall, how it drove, you know, what the temps are like, all that good stuff. All right, well, the cruise overall went pretty good. As far as the cruising aspect, the truck did super well. This is the first time I've got it gone fast enough for the converter to lock up. It locked up, it cruised, the trans temps are coming down on the highway, truck temps are staying steady under 200, and that's with the dinky temporary fans we have. We got bigger fans to go on, so it should run even cooler than that, which even that, I mean, that's about where it should be operating temp. It's a 187 thermostat. If we want to make it run cooler, we can put a lower thermostat in it. But either way, as far as I was concerned, it did great. But obviously, the biggest issue, the elephant in the room, boost cut. We still have boost cut. So I wasn't sure. It seemed like it was only making 11 pounds. It was stopping at 11 pounds, but it wasn't. So that was the highest I've revved it. It was like 6,500. All the other pulls, my data logs only go to like 6,200. So that was the first time I've taken it that far, and it just, from 6,200 to like 6,500, it made an extra 3 pounds of boost, right? So it just ran right into the boost cut. So that is a problem. So trying to decide what to do. So we put the fender liner back in to test and see if it even fits, because that was the whole reason I did this like this instead of just putting the gate right on the manifold, was to try to keep the fender liner. But now with the new and improved dump tube, it doesn't fit anyway. So we got some decisions to make there, whether to kind of route a second gate up to about here and try to have 2 dump pipes, or recirc into the exhaust, or try to fit one big 60 mil gate and just right off the manifold and get rid of the fender liner. I don't know. I got to decide on that. But that is a problem we have to sort out ASAP because the truck just hits boost cut. So I'd like to be able to turn this thing down to 6-7 pounds, beat the snot out of it, and have the option to turn it up, not just stuck with what we got, you know? So at least though, under load, doing the burnout, there's not enough load for it to hit boost cut. So I can still do burnouts. I can still rip it and cruise it. I definitely want to get that fixed ASAP so I can go beat the snot out of this thing some more. So really happy with it overall though. The street truck aspect feels pretty dialed in. Like, I'm so happy with how the dash turned out and the Bluetooth receiver and everything. Like it's everything I was hoping it would be. Still got the trailer brake controller. We'll have to try to tow the trailer with it once we get everything kind of sorted. Ultimate goal is to have the Miata on the trailer doing a burnout and this thing towing the trailer doing a burnout. But I want to break her in first before we start. That's a lot, but that's ultimate goals, has been the goal since I decided to build this truck. So anyway, more on that later. For now, we're kind of out of things to do, out of parts, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I hope to see you guys next time, but for now, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Goodbye.